You learned early that being accepted keeps you safe, that saying the right things, smiling on cue, avoiding conflict, it all earns you something. Attention, approval, love. And so you adapted. You shaped yourself around what other people wanted. You became agreeable, pleasing, predictable. And the more they smiled at you, the more you believed, this must be who I'm supposed to be. But here's what they never told you. Approval isn't love, and needing it is the fastest way to lose yourself. Because the deeper you fall into that need, the more pieces of yourself you start to trade away. You silence your thoughts. You downplay your feelings. You become a mirror, reflecting whatever version of yourself people seem to like most. It feels safe at first, comfortable, familiar. But what begins as connection turns into performance. You're no longer being, you're managing. Every conversation becomes a calculation. Every silence feels like a threat. And every room you walk into is another audience you need to win over. It's exhausting. But worse, it's invisible. Because no one can see how much effort it takes to keep being liked. And slowly, without even noticing, your value becomes outsourced. You don't feel real unless someone validates it. You don't feel enough unless someone reflects it back. And the more you chase that reflection, the more you forget your own shape. This is the trap. The more approval you need, the less yourself you become. And yet, the world keeps feeding it. Social cues, algorithms, likes, comments, compliments. It all rewards the mask, not the person underneath. But deep down, you know the applause feels hollow. You know the love feels rented, not owned. You know that every time you bite your tongue just to keep the peace, you lose a part of your voice. And that voice is dying for air. Because when your worth depends on other people's reactions, you become a prisoner to their moods, their opinions, their silence. You give them the remote control to your self-esteem and hope they don't change the channel. But eventually, they do. They get distracted. They get bored. They move on. And you're left spiraling, wondering what you did wrong, what changed, what part of you was no longer enough. But the truth is, you were never truly seen to begin with. They saw the version of you that never said no, that always smiled, that stayed quiet just long enough to be tolerable. They didn't fall in love with you. They fell in love with your approval of them. And that kind of connection doesn't last. Because it's not connection, it's compliance. You start to notice something strange. The more you give, the less they value it. The more available you are, the more invisible you feel. The more you try to be liked, the more alone you become. And still, you keep trying. Because the fear of being disliked, of being left, is louder than your need to be real. But what if that fear is the very thing keeping you small? What if your need for approval is not just a feeling, but a system? One that's been programmed into you, trained into your nervous system, conditioned so deeply that you can't tell where it ends and where you begin. Because the fear of disapproval doesn't just make you polite, it makes you passive, it makes you silent, it makes you afraid to take up space in your own life. But here's the paradox. The more you try to be acceptable to everyone, the less you belong to anyone. And that includes yourself. So you keep performing. You nod when you want to shake your head. You smile when something hurts. You laugh when it's not funny. Not because you're fake, but because somewhere along the way, you were taught that being real is risky. That honesty creates tension. That truth pushes people away. So you became easy to love and hard to know. But the price of being easy is this. You lose access to your full self. You forget what it feels like to disagree, to take up space, to stop editing yourself mid-sentence. Because when your survival depends on harmony, conflict feels like death. Even small tension becomes unbearable. You feel it in your stomach, in your breath, in your silence. So you apologize, you back down, you play small, just to keep the peace that's never really peaceful. But here's the twist. Approval is addictive because it's immediate, because it's easy to chase, because it gives you a temporary sense of worth without requiring truth. But like any addiction, it costs you something permanent. And what it costs you is yourself. And when you finally stop chasing it, when you let go of trying to be palatable, agreeable, digestible, you'll feel it. The fear, the silence, the shift. And that's where the work begins. If you've made it this far, subscribe and hit the bell. This channel isn't here to please, it's here to wake you up. Because real acceptance doesn't come when you mold yourself to fit. It comes when you stand still and say, "This is who I am, and it's enough." And yes, some people will leave. Some will misunderstand you. Some will call you difficult, cold, selfish. But remember, you don't exist to make others comfortable. You exist to be whole. Because the moment you stop editing yourself for others, you begin to see who was really listening and who was only sticking around because you never challenged them. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop asking, "Do they still like me?" and start asking, "Do I still like myself when I'm around them?" That question changes everything. You start to notice the micro compromises, the quiet betrayals of self, the way your gut tightens before you speak, calculating every possible reaction. And suddenly, it's not worth it anymore. You begin to grieve the years you spent auditioning for roles you didn't want to play, the way you shaped your personality to fit someone else's comfort zone, the times you kept the peace by breaking your own integrity. And then something powerful happens. You stop flinching at distance. You stop fearing disapproval. You stop mistaking attention for affection. Because attention fades, affection wears masks. But respect, the real kind, only grows when you stop chasing it. There's freedom in the fallout. When you stop performing for love, you give people a chance to choose you for who you really are. And if they don't, you let them go. Not as a punishment, not as revenge, but as release. Because you're no longer interested in relationships that require self-abandonment to survive. And it's in that letting go, that terrifying, liberating letting go, that something shifts. You remember your own voice. You reclaim your own shape. You realize that approval isn't oxygen, it's noise. And you're finally breathing. When you stop performing, not everyone will clap. But the silence you feared, it's not empty, it's honest. And in that honesty, you'll find yourself again. Not the version shaped by pressure, not the version addicted to praise, the version that remembers what it means to speak without flinching, to take up space without apology, to stand still in who you are even when no one's clapping. And maybe fewer people will stay. Maybe fewer will understand you, but the ones who do, they'll see you. Not the mask, not the mirror, you. And when that happens, it won't feel like validation. It'll feel like alignment. It'll feel like truth. Because real connection isn't built on approval. It's built on presence. And you can't be fully present when half of you is performing. So here's the shift. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You need to be loyal to yourself. That's not rebellion. That's healing. You've spent enough time being quiet so others could be comfortable. Now it's your turn to be clear. Even if it means being misunderstood. Even if it means standing alone. Even if it means letting go. Because peace isn't found in people-pleasing. It's found in self-respect. And that's not something they give you. It's something you choose. So now I'll ask you, What part of yourself have you silenced just to be accepted, and are you finally ready to take it back? Let me know in the comments.